So my name is Patricia Wyrick. I am the Rural Program Administrator for the South Dakota Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources Forest Stewardship Program. We're going to go through the state's Forest Stewardship Program and its plans today. And there's our nice new logo. Thank goes out to South Dakota Family Forest Association for their participation in help getting this set as well. So first off, what is a forest stewardship plan is what we're going to cover, along with why have a forest stewardship plan, the parts that are required for a state-approved forest stewardship plan, what to do after creating a forest stewardship plan, and the monitoring that the state does with any of these programs. Stuart, if you'd please hit mute. So first off, what is a forest stewardship plan? The forest stewardship plan is a comprehensive plan that assesses the limitations and potentials of the forested property and any recommendation actions for landowners and accomplish their goals and objectives without jeopardizing private property rights, helping you come up with a plan on how to manage your property. It should be a comprehensive look at all of the resources and that it serves, which could include fields, windbreaks, barns, snow fences, primarily living barns is another form of like trees. Forest stewardships are voluntary, and with them being completed, a landowner has a voluntary participation in the program and represents a good faith that they are committed to the strategies and implementing them as suggested by professionals to the landowner based off their objectives. Participation in the property does not jeopardize any private property rights, and they're not an absolute requirement. We would just like them to be tailored to landowners to encourage them to do all the implementation strategies. Each plan is considered a living document or a dynamic document. What that means is at any point in time, you can change it, you can modify it. It's not a contract, which is where I get a lot of landowners are concerned because they have to meet certain deadlines. We prefer that people try to do that, but that is not absolutely a requirement. So why have a forest stewardship plan? Forest stewardship plans are great for assessing landowners on how to keep the land productive and healthy. To be great at things, it's great to have a plan, to set goals, know how to get them, and get to that accomplished goal. And that's what a forest stewardship plan is. It created also knowing any public policies that are also going on in the area that might affect landowners. And it's to protect and conserve farmland for current and future generations, along with supporting agricultural economic development. So the parts of a forest stewardship plan, to be in the state's program, we have to identify and have in the plan the following information: the landowner's management objectives and goals, the acres that are affected, both forested and non-forested, the overall site descriptions of the property, resource elements, including their presence, condition, potential, and protection as they relate to the landowner's objectives. The duration of the plans depend on the person that creates the plans. We typically recommend 10 years with 5-year monitoring, but that is up to the resource professional that is utilized to create these plans. The forest stewardship plan needs to be created by a professional forester. We would like implementation records, both past if there is some, but definitely for future maps and any supporting documentation that one might have. And supporting documentation might be someone is spraying their weeds, and with the way the state regulates some of that information, making sure that they have proper contracts or that they're noting it as following the other guidelines that are set out there. So some of the resource elements that need to be addressed, and if they aren't present, need to at least be said that they don't exist in that area. If they are present, what are they? What management is going to be done with them? That includes fish and wildlife, timber management, wood fiber production. Timber management and wood typically get thrown in together, which is great. Agroforestry, which is civil forestry, is also in that as well. So if you have cattle and you're grazing in the same area that you have trees growing, that's what agroforestry can be in. Threatened and endangered species reviews are required, and just to make sure that we're not endangering species further that are on those lists, since those are federal lists. Cultural resources and any special sites. Now, special sites don't necessarily have to be cultural resources. They can include sites that are special to the landowner and the landowner's objectives. Some great examples are, there's been landowners who've had special events at their property, such as weddings, that they want to make sure that they keep that area in the condition it's always been, because they really want to promote that. Water and soil and biological diversity. So with that, some other additional elements that we are required to have addressed in these plans, or at least mentioned, is carbon sequestration, climate resiliences, recreation, range, aesthetics, the desired timber species. So if you're wanting to promote quaking aspen in a certain area, that is part of the plan, or ponderosa pine because you want wood production. It's all encompassed in that. General forest health, so, and that kind of typically goes with invasive species. Are we seeing any Ips beetle out there, which this year, from what we've seen so far, is going to be a high year that people are going to have a lot of Ips involved. Any invasive species, including thistles, which I'm sure quite a few people have noticed, some noxious weeds before. A forest of recognized importance is required to be mentioned in every plan. But in the state of South Dakota, we don't have any forests of recognized importance. But since this is just a standard for the programs that this is all through, that is something that we need to identify. Forests of recognized importance would be like the watershed that feeds into the city of New York. We've asked about the same thought process for like the city of Rapid City. We don't have the population to support this. Forest of recognized importance is on a like national level identification. And then conservation-based estate planning. That part primarily to make sure that these timberland stays within the family or doesn't get broke up. We want to discourage fragmentation as much as possible. We want to keep ag and as productive as possible in the system. So you have a resource professional and they've created one of these forest stewardship plans. One of the big things is what to do after you have one created, right? Well, what we would like you to do is implement the management recommendations. That's why the management recommendations are tailored per person, which is also the reason why forest stewardship plans don't transfer when people sell, because someone's objectives are completely different than another's, and they are tailored specifically for each landowner's goals and objectives. So in implementing them, you might need to be contacting contractors, professionals in order to a commercial harvest, or implementing non-commercial harvest procedures, working with contractors to do those tops, or simply monitoring your own property at that time, if that's what your management recommendation is, and looking for, invasive species, health, condition, and making sure and treating those every time that you see it. For example, like Ips beetle, if you have a tree that's just hammered hard, you probably want to cut that down, while you're at it, or if you have an area that's disturbed, to make sure that invasive species don't come in. So with that, the state participates in a forest program monitoring. Now, the people that are selected for the monitoring haven't been visited by the state for 5 years, or their forest stewardship plan has not been identified to the state for 5 years. Because that first 5 years, we let people, look at their forest stewardship plan and hopefully implement things. Our monitoring is to see if people are actually implementing these forest stewardship plans, and we want to encourage it as much as possible. So we historically monitor 10% of the people that have not been visited in 5 years, but they are randomly selected. It's a computer algorithm. There might be plans that don't get visited for longer than that, but that just haven't been identified by us.